the Holy Land. I remember we were staying once near the Sea of Galilee, and I get up really early, so I got up before the sun, and I stood out by the water's edge, and I could hear the gentle lapping of the water, and I could see the moon still shimmering on the top of the water. And I stood there, and I said, Jesus walked on this water. And exactly at that moment, this light burst behind me, and it illumined the whole area where I was standing. And I said, yes, Lord. And I turned slowly towards the light, and the McDonald's had just opened at the sea. So I went in and got a cup of coffee. Boy, do we want this spectacular and out of the ordinary. And Jesus seems to insist that it's in fluorescent light and an Egg McMuffin. The risen life hidden in your life, and in a special way hidden in those on the margins, in the poor and the powerless and the voiceless, in those whose burdens are more than they can bear, in those whose dignity has been denied, hidden in the easily despised and the readily left out, in the demonized with whom we choose to stand so that the demonizing will stop, in the disposable in whom we choose to stand so the day will come when we stop throwing people away. Tears wiped away, death swallowed up, victorious meaning, and the risen life hidden in them, in you, here and now. Maybe some of you have been to Homegirl Cafe, where women with records, young ladies from rival gangs, waitresses with attitude will gladly take your order. A year ago, Oscar-winning actress Diane Keaton showed up for lunch, she of Annie Hall and Godfather fame. She'd never been there. She came with a regular, a guy who is there once a week. And her waitress this day is Glinda, and Glinda's a homegirl, been there, done that, tattooed, been to prison, parolee, felon. She doesn't know who Diane Keaton is. And so she's taking her order, and Diane Keaton says, well, what do you recommend? And Glinda rattles off the 3 platillos that she particularly likes, and Diane Keaton says, oh, I'll have that second one. That sounds good. And suddenly something dawns on Glinda, and she says, wait a minute, I feel like I know you from somewhere, like maybe we've met. And Diane Keaton decides to, deflect it humbly. Oh, gosh, I don't know, I suppose I have one of those faces that people think they've seen before. And then Glenda goes, no, now I know. We were locked up together. And that just took my breath away. I don't believe we've had any further Diane Keaton sightings now that I think of it. But the risen life hidden in an Oscar-winning actress and in an attitudinal waitress. Exactly right. Tomorrow morning I will bury my 181st young human being killed in our streets for no reason whatsoever. His name was Richard. He was born in the very first week I arrived at Dolores Mission Church 27 years ago. I've known him all his life. We hope against hope that every tear will be wiped away, that death will be swallowed up, and that there will be some victorious meaning in a senseless loss of life. All of us are called to be what Alice Miller, the late great child psychologist, called enlightened witnesses, people who through your kindness and tenderness and focused, attentive love return people to themselves. But most particularly, you return people to an unshakable recognition that the risen life is hidden in their life. That's what we're called to do. I wrote a book, and last fall, there were any number of universities that seemed to force their students to read my book, so I felt obliged to go when they invited me to speak, So the Gonzaga University in Spokane, my alma mater, forced the entire freshman class to read my book. So I felt sorry for them, and I flew up there, and often enough bring homies or homegirls with me to travel, just so they can have the experience of seeing a world outside their own. And so I brought two homies with me, Bobby, African-American gang member who works in the bakery, and Mario, a Latino gang member who works in our Homeboy, Homegirl merchandise division. I always invite homies or homegirls who've never been on a plane before, which is, most of them haven't. I've never in all my life, of the hundreds and hundreds I've taken flying, I've never met a homie more panicked and terrified than this guy Mario. I mean, hyperventilating. I thought I might have to call the paramedics at some point in our travels. And so we were flying out of Burbank, and Burbank airport, it's smaller, and Southwest Airlines, and these big bay windows, and you see the plane arrive, and and you walk out on the tarmac, no kind of hermetically sealed chute, And so at Burbank, they have the stairs leading up to the front of the plane and the stairs leading up to the back of the plane. And Mario's quite nervous, and we're sitting by the window. I said, well, here's our plane. And the plane arrives. It's early morning, and everybody gets off the plane. And then I watch two flight attendants, females, with very large cups of Starbucks coffee, and they're clumping up the front steps to the plane, one after the other. And Mario goes, when are we going to board the plane? And I said, well, as soon as they sober up the pilot, there they go now. All right, maybe I shouldn't have said that. I'm not very good at this. I once was with three homies. We were flying to Oakland, and they were all panicky, especially this one wiry little kid named Joey. And every time I tried to calm him down, he says, you're forgetting I'm not a frequent flyer. And I said, so we're about to land in Oakland, and the pilot gets on and says, flight attendants, prepare for arrival. And Joey gets panicked, and he says, oh my God, that was the pilot. What did he just say? I didn't hear him. I said, I didn't get it all either. Something about emergency landing and parachutes, I think, was something else. Anyway, I'm not good at this. So Mario's quite panicked, and I should tell you that Mario is one of the most tattooed individuals we've almost ever had work at Homeboy Industries in our 25 years, thousands and thousands, and maybe he's the number 2 most tattooed individual. He's completely covered. His arms are covered, his neck. The only thing on his face is sort of a circle where his eyes and his nose and mouth are, but everything else is covered with tattoos. I'd never been out in public with him, so there I am at the Burbank terminal, and I'm noticing how people are kind of doing this, and mothers are vaguely clutching their kids, which is odd because Mario is among the most kind, gentle, angelic gang members I've ever met, though the packaging might suggest otherwise. And so I watched how throughout the whole trip, and even on the plane, for as terrified as he was hyper polite and kind and gentle. As the flight attendant was handing him peanuts, he didn't just take them, and he didn't just thank her. He grabs her hands and looks her in the eyes and says, thank you so much. So kind. Well, we get to Spokane, and of course the big talk is at night that I'm going to give, and but then of course this happens when they fly you somewhere. They plan all these other things, a class, a talk, a class, a lunch, a meeting, a class. And I thought, oh my God. So I turned to Bobby and to Mario. I said, I'm not going to speak at any of these events. You guys are. I'm going to sit in the back of the classroom. Of course, they're a little bit nervous about doing this, and they're not used to telling their story, and homies sometimes don't know they have a story until they start to tell it. And so I watched and listened stories of great terror and violence, abandonment, rejection, heartache. If their stories had been flames, you'd have to keep your distance. Otherwise, you'd get scorched. So the nighttime comes, and it's the big talk, and there are 1,000 people packed in there, standing room only, students sitting on the floor in direct violation of fire code. And I told Bobby and Mario, look, I want you guys, after I speak, to just do a little 5-minute snapshot of your lives, just like you've told it all day, so that you can be included in the question and answer. And of course, they were a little nervous, but especially Mario, because it's 1,000 people. So I spoke for 45 minutes, and then they gave their little snapshot. And they were great, though Mario was sort of terrified at the prospect, but he got through it. So, question and answer, and I turn, and a woman, yes, ma'am, and she stands, and she says, yeah, I have a question. It's for Mario. Well, Mario steps up to the microphone, yes? And the first question out the gate is for him, and she says, you say that your father, you have a daughter and a son, and they're about to enter their teenage years. What wisdom do you impart to them? What advice do you give them? And Mario stands there and he closes his eyes and he wants to get the right answer, and the one that's formulating in his head, and he blurts out, and he catches himself and he starts to crumble a bit under the weight of the thing, and he loses his battle against tears, but he wants to get this whole sentence out. I just don't want my kids to turn out to be like me. And there's silence until the woman stands and she says with great emotion, why wouldn't you want your kids to turn out to be like you? You are gentle, you are kind, you are loving, you are wise. I hope your kids turn out to be like you. And 1,000 total strangers stand, and they will not stop clapping. And they clap, and they clap. And all Mario can do is just hold his face in his hands, so overwhelmed that a room full of strangers had chosen to return himself to himself, risen life, hidden there. And I think that's the only praise God has any interest in.